Well, kids, I can't believe I'm saying this, but younger people don't want to pick up the phone. They want to go and watch a smaller video clip. So if we can take our knowledge and give it to them the way that they want it, figuring out like help with how do you select this piece of equipment, and it's on a website that's linked to HubSpot that we can track. Oh, these customers are coming here. They may not be calling us, but they're coming here. It's always about a personal connection. So we want to bring it back to the personal connection, but we know what they're looking for, whether someone's on the traditional things like LinkedIn and our Instagram page, those types of things. But really, if we can harness the information that we're giving them, maybe we do podcasts, maybe we do video clips, whatever they are. But now we're bringing them back through, again, the CRM, and we know what the customers are looking at where we may not have known that before. I think that's where this is going for us.
John Plumley, it's good to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm excellent. Like I said, it's excellent to see your face and in person almost instead of being on the phone. So this is great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, John. It's my pleasure. We've been talking about this for I think maybe 9 months now, getting you on the show, and I'm glad we're finally doing it. John, to kick us off, tell us a little bit about Tri State HVAC.
Sure. Well, the funny thing is that when I tell people I'm in air conditioning, they think that we're in residential air conditioning. It's normally the normal response, but we're a commercial HVAC manufacturer's representative. So we deal with hospitals, universities, those types of things, large projects. We typically don't sell directly to them. Our main client has typically been the engineer who designs the project, and we'll work with them to generate plans, specifications, hopefully around our product. It goes out to market through a bidding process to contractors, and then we're involved in that process where the customer, in that case, will be the contractor, will purchase the equipment from us. That's the main, that's our main business. And then we also sell parts for that business, for those products, and we'll service them as well.
Right. And so commercial HVAC is really the sort of the big category that you're in. And you and I have spoken before. So how that industry is set up in the U.S. is for obvious reasons. Once you shared with me, it was obvious, but initially it wasn't that obvious to me, which is that you're very, it's a very regional type of business because you have to be able to service the customers where all the equipment was initially installed, correct?
That's correct. We have a unique, I'll say, business model in that we serve the Philadelphia metropolitan area. So it's Philadelphia, southern New Jersey, and eastern Pennsylvania. And there's only a few big manufacturers in the HVAC world. The company that owns us, majority owned piece of our business, is one of those manufacturers. And then we have we deal only in that market, and you expand within that market. So it's a bit of a captured market, meaning that who we typically sell to, the same engineers, the same contractors, and at the end of the day, the same owners. It's a repeat business.
Right. Yeah. No, it sounds like a great business model. John, sort of maybe and then just maybe one more thing while we're talking about Tri. So what is currently your role at Tri-State?
Well, this is a new role and has something to do with you, which is the director of RevOps. It's and we've talked about this a bunch, but I guess for your audience, about 2.5 years, as I previously mentioned, one of the manufacturers has purchased a majority of our business. The two previous partners, they've moved along, and there's myself and two others who have taken over the business. So we've each broken up things into to different areas that we want to deal with. I've always love the idea, as crazy as that sounds, of implementing a CRM. And when our previous partner was here, he had developed a CRM himself. And I had
Right.
advised him, as to what the sales people would want to see, because that's what I was in sales for 25 years. So I've always wanted to do this, but even dating back 25 years when Salesforce came along and there was no such thing as a CRM until they were out there, I would do that myself. I took their free version and I play around with it. So I always had this interest in figuring out how to use technology to advance sales. And now, going back to your original question, not just sales, but how do we grow the business and how do we use technology and how are we data driven, all these types of things that are not necessarily new, but they are something that people are interested in, especially with AI. So I've
Mhm.
taken this new role, transitioned in, and we've gone through a lot of change. We've had to implement 3 or 4 different software to get to this point. But now this is where the rubber hits the road, that we can start to take some of this technology and produce revenue from it, which is at least my interpretation of RevOps.
Yeah, yeah. So, uh, John, maybe sort of go back to what do you think? Sort of just to dig a little deeper into why have you always been so interested in CRM? Like, what was the value that you've seen all along, and like in what a CRM would do for you, and I guess more on a bigger scale for your team and your business.
Yeah, I mean, from a personal standpoint, I'm a mechanical engineer. That's what I went to school for. Of course, I went into mechanical engineering because I always had that thought process, right? Figuring things out, problem solving. That's what led me there. And as far as the CRM goes, I just find it uh, interesting how you can leverage what you're doing by getting visibility. Nowadays, you can automate things, which is even greater. We'll start using the Marketing Hub and HubSpot, as you know. But
Hmm.
even before you get into the automation, it's just having visibility of what you're doing, what you have done, and how can you figure out where to go next based on that information. Which, if you're doing the normal thing where you just call up, and this is what we do when it's easy to pick up the phone and just make sales. But there's a point at which, especially for a company, where as you start to grow and you bring on new salespeople or whatever it may be, you need to produce that revenue for them, and you need to dig a little deeper than just picking up the phone for your existing customers.
Mm, mm. So you talk about two things: automation and visibility. And so when you're talking about visibility, and that's kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about the sort of the data driven piece, which is, so you, like every other business, has business metrics that you're driving towards, which typically start with sales, metrics, KPIs, whatever the terms are that you use. And then and obviously you need to be very clear about what those metrics are. And and then you're driving behaviors, like in sales. Typically you're driving behaviors where the outcome will be seeing you hit those metrics on a quarterly or annual basis. Is that kind of what you mean by visibility? Is actually seeing what like where the team is driving towards?
Sure. From a very simple standpoint, it's just seeing what you've done. So, for instance, if you want to look at, if you've got certain mechanical contractors, that's what I did. I dealt with mechanical contractors, and you have a feel for what you've done with them as far as business goes, what type of projects that you sold to them, what you've lost. You can now see that just on the simple terms. If you're going to start using HubSpot or any other CRM, that's the easiest
Hmm.
thing.
Right.
Taking a step back, previously, before stepping into this role, we didn't have those KPIs that you talked about. We didn't have the structure to jump ahead to that. So the first thing was, let's just pull data in and see what's happening. We had some hunches as to what we thought, and they're actually coming true, right? Who our best customers are, what the types of projects are that we should be chasing based on our win rate and that type of thing. But now we can move forward into the larger KPIs, and not just through HubSpot. There's other software that we have that we can now take the data and say, okay, this is how long it takes us to invoice someone. This is how long it takes us to close a work order through service. All of those types of things. Here are ratios between different divisions within the company, which are the metrics that we're trying to hit, which that's the visibility.
Yeah. So the visibility into the data, into those metrics, it allows you to make better, faster decisions, I guess, is ultimately what it comes down to.
Well, we're just starting that. It's been a 2-year process to go through implementations, through discovery, and through the implementation itself. And now having the data, we're just starting to see that we can make those decisions. So it doesn't necessarily have to be quicker. First, let's just make the decision and focus in on it. And then I think we're getting to the point where we will start to make those a bit quicker, meaning what used to be a hunch is now in the data, and it would have taken a longer time before. And now we go, okay, that's great. And we can even see it happen as the market's changing just a bit in our world, that maybe we need to shift what we're doing. And we're looking at the numbers and saying it's time based on how many projects per month we bid, what is the dollar volume, we're trending data. And that was really the reason that going back to the original question, I love CRM, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So I guess going back to, you just alluded to this, the sort of the implementation process. So you shared how you've always been excited about having a CRM that can help you be better as a leader, as a salesperson, and enable the rest of your team to do things that are going to drive results for the business, right? As you went through the implementation, and now you're starting to look forward to how do you optimize that system, so you're always getting maximum value from your CRM and the data and decisions that can drive. Were there any sort of surprises that you sort of learned, things that you learned that you weren't expecting to think about as you went into the sort of, made the decision and then started getting into implementing the CRM?
I mean, I could probably go on for the next few days if you wanted to, but sure. It was, as I mentioned, it's a new role. And, I've always thought that, I guess after a few years of being in the business world, that, I look at people and I go, I think I could do that. Right. I, may not necessarily have the skill set, but you'll jump into it. And that's really, what has happened over the past 2 years, where I didn't have implementation experience. I didn't have experience in going out and picking out software and how to implement it within a company. Now it's gone pretty well. There's been some ups and downs, but at the end of the day, there's been a lot of learning experiences. And it was true that we were able to pull that off, so to speak. I do think that the biggest, and I'm not going to say it was unexpected, but the biggest challenge is really the change management in how you handle implementing, in this case, it's software, but any change, even just the processes that we're going through in documenting right now. It's explaining what you're doing, and we didn't do a great job of it. I mean, it's something new. You're going to make a mistake. I'll learn from this experience and we'll move on next time. And we're starting to see that. Let me just talk about the change management. It's telling people what you're doing, why you're doing it, when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it. And then not even just telling them, but getting their input. We thought we did a good job of getting input. We could have done a much better job in pulling in key resources and people to make decisions. But another learning experience, it's always a balance. We were under a deadline. We had to get it done. It was a big dollar amount that we would have been stuck for just because of the timeline. So it was always a balance, but I do believe that we could have done a better job in communicating. So next time we go along, we know, okay, and we can do things slower next time. Let's bring everyone in. Let's talk about what we're going to do. Let's have different divisions talk to each other and allow them to come up with the process. That's really been the biggest learning experience.
Yeah. And I love the way you ended that. You actually talked about process, which is, I think, is one of the things that we see most frequently when we're doing implementations, and it's not again, like, and you're probably a perfect example where you're a business leader who is really passionate about, doing smart business, and working smarter, not harder. But when you haven't done something before, you're coming into a CRM implementation thinking that it's just, it's a technology implementation. How hard can it be?
Yeah.
But I think you just touched on some of the most important things, which of course is you mentioned change management, like that, why, how, when, and all the different questions that come up. But then you ended by with in your last sentence you talked about process, and that's essentially a big part of what we have to do, because you cannot implement technology until you understand the processes that the technology is supposed to make better and more automated. So you have to map those processes out manually before you add any technology to it. The same thing with the data. You need to understand what the data outcomes are. So yeah, no, that's that again, not surprising, but thanks for sharing
That's
that
a
with
good
us.
point. About the processes, mapping them out ahead of time. That's what we're doing now as we start to bring on bits and pieces of the software, so to speak. But we didn't have that ability. We would have loved to do that and map things out ahead of time, because it would have been much clearer for everyone. So that is the balance, and we do see the need for documenting, having people involved in those processes, and it's much easier.
Yeah. So you alluded to something else that's I think very important, which was you said you were pressed for time, and I think that's because you had a previous CRM that you had to get off. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We had a deadline where it renewed. It was quite a bit of money. We were losing support for it, and we're concerned that we were not going to be able to, the business would not be able to function if there was an issue. So we knew we had to get off. But the interesting part was that was a CRM and operations software for a piece of the business. And then we also had our accounting software. So when we made one change, they cascade through, because the ultimate goal was to have the systems talk back and forth. We could have just done anything. We could have found a software to replace the CRM. We could have found an operations software. We could have stuck with our original accounting software. But what would have happened is we would have gotten through this. Now we're done with the implementations, and we would have been in the same spot, right? The accounting software doesn't talk to the operations software. And the challenge there is, or let's say the benefit of having them connected, is we are now catching things that we didn't know we would catch, or we thought we would, but now we're seeing it. Do we pay an invoice twice? Does it show up in the project? So that was the end goal, was to have those softwares integrated, but it made it that much harder. And when we came to that time crunch, it was, how much of this can we get done before that deadline? And then after the deadline, what do we need to clean up afterwards? So that was the rush. In a perfect world, I would have spent a year and a half figuring it out, maybe a year. But we spent 6 months from let's go to it's implemented.
Right. Yeah. Which I think, so what you're saying is, like, if you'd had the luxury, knowing what you know now, and knowing that you had to roll off a previous tech stack or combination of siloed softwares, you would have started 12 months in advance, like figuring out, like mapping out, like, what do we need to do in marketing, sales, service, and then integrating with your accounting software, etc. You would have mapped that all out long in advance, and then you can go out in good time and get pricing from whether it's on the for the software side, as well as who's going to implement and then integrate these different systems. Because again, that's something that we're dealing with all the time. And we're never, when we're implementing the HubSpot CRM or whatever component of HubSpot, there's in the work that we're doing, it's always integrating with multiple other pieces of software. And of course, and then there are some, to your point, that are critical, and depending on the industry. But the accounting software is always going to be a critical one at some point. If not right now, it will be, to your point. In 6 months or 12 months, the accounting software has to be incorporated or integrated with the CRM. And of course, with sort of invoicing technology now, the whole sort of CPQ market. So in other words, how do you shorten the process from customer to quote to sale, and because the technology now exists to make that a very, very easy, so much easier process and a much better customer experience. And that's now all being integrated, and that's forcing that integration, which is, really cool to see.
That's really been a great benefit. And I sometimes forget about the way we used to do things, but we knew that moving into this, that we would speed certain things up, right? So just like you talked about invoicing, having that invoice come in, be able to not scan it and print it and put it on someone's desk, to have a process set up, which of course people were resistant to. Let's tag something this way. Let's have it however you get that information across, which is the biggest challenge, but have it automated as much as you can and have a quick turnaround. That's we're not through that yet. We have much to take advantage of, but we're starting to see uh, those processes speed up and save time so that the accounting department can take on more, or maybe not be as stressed, or whatever it may be. That's been a great benefit that we knew was coming, but it's finally taken hold.
Yeah, yeah. Which of course is again another really good example of the change management that you were alluding to. When you started doing a CRM implementation, and then you realized, oh, actually we can integrate invoicing and we can integrate, whatever else on the back end. You didn't think that you'd have to have your AR and AP sort of accounting team get involved and have them go through the change management as well. It's like, oh yeah, actually, but if you do the change management correctly, and they see how their lives are going to get better, once this change is made, it's an absolutely worthwhile investment.
Well, that is, and I mentioned this before. Someone had told me about the Valley of Despair, which anyone who's in SaaS, I guess, knows about this, but people that sell air conditioning don't know about that, right? And as someone's going through the pain of change, and we touched everyone in the company, from technicians to accounting or whatever it may be, they're not seeing it the same way I am. Here are all the benefits. It's affecting them, and things were fine. They may not have been perfect, but whatever your system was, it worked, and you moved along. Now you put all this turmoil on them, and you'd say, well, it's for the better, and this is what's going to happen. And even when you're out of it, people are still resistant to see that it's helping. But I only want it to be that when they see that it's better for them, that they're okay. That's that Valley of Despair, getting out of it, and you just a little bit better. As much as you think, myself, that when we implement this, that you're going to get this huge benefit, there's a little bit of an offset for the pain that someone's gone through to get there. So I'm just hoping that at the end of the day, that hopefully everyone, it's just a little bit better for them, and then it's better for the company as well.
Yeah.
So we're just out of that Valley of Despair. We're moving on,
which is an awesome place to be, right?
It's much better.
Yeah. But I think you nail it. It's like, until each individual user of whatever these new processes or technology are going to be, until they see what the benefit is to them personally, it's going to be really hard for them to sort of get on board. So yeah, I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to, and where we've spent a lot of time in the last year and a half, really going deep and investing in training on the change management side, because we've realized it is the single biggest factor to any technology being implemented and adopted for the longer term, not just for the first year. But if you're investing all this time and energy and money into systems that are going to make your business better, you want to make sure that the people are going to use it the way that it was intended, and that you get the benefits from that. And the change management and training that we've incorporated now has made the world of difference. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, John. And I think you touched on another thing with that I think reminds me of a lot of conversations we have with more traditional businesses. And so I guess I mean, would you consider yourself like in the larger construction space? I mean, that's really
Yes. Yeah.
the industry that you're in, right? And so, and construction and real estate are always considered, the sort of more traditional industries, where to some of the comments that you made, I mean, it's like we've been doing things for this for a very long time, very successfully with very happy customers. Why would we want to complicate
Yeah.
things? And I think that's where there's such a massive opportunity right now for businesses in more traditional industries like construction and real estate, where it is time to potentially benefit from some of the changes that are happening.
That's always the opportunity that I've seen. I knew that this business, because it was captured, and you're typically the more successful rep firms are backed by one of the bigger manufacturers. So you have their national marketing, you have the brand name. It's easy just to show up. It's how can you take it to the next level? And our business is also very sleepy. It's
Mhm.
an older business. It's easy. People stay in it for a long time. I've been doing the same thing for 25 years. I've been at this company for 16 years. People, they stay and they do what they know, but there's not a lot of technology implementation. I think the only thing that's different now from when I started is now we send engineers catalogs electronically, and we used to go into their office to update their catalogs. That's really the only difference. Maybe some photocopies and that type of thing. But if the goal here is if we can jump ahead of everyone to another level, and there's other things that we haven't even spoken about, which is the old term IoT and bringing in the technology that's on the equipment so we can showcase it and respond
Mhm.
quicker. That's another level. But
Yeah.
if we're going to be data driven and figuring out how to go after new markets, to market to them, to expand within our own territory, competitors aren't doing that. I don't want to give away too many secrets, but that's what we're planning on doing.
So let's talk about that. Let's unpack that for a little bit. So, I mean, when you think about that sort of that competitive advantage, I mean, how does it really show up? Like, where does it start? So for example, you're investing, heavily into making sure that you're staying ahead of the opportunities that are currently available to you, using technology and using like the frameworks and the models and things that we talk about, including how you've sort of started building RevOps into your business. I can tell you for sure, there are not a lot of businesses in your industry that are doing that. Um, but but I think that doesn't really mean anything until you make it real, as far as like what where does the rubber meet the road, as far as you suddenly look different to your competitors.
Again, I don't want to give away too many secrets, but I think the thought process here is the reason why Tri State does so well compared to our competitors is that we are the knowledge base for the engineers. They rely on us because they don't know the particulars about our equipment. We rep 30 some odd lines. It's difficult for us to know about them. And then they have multiple representatives. They can't always use us, but they rely on us for information, and that's why they come back to us to help them with their
Mm.
designs and that type of thing. So moving forward, like I said, to deal with an engineer, you used to go in and hand them catalogs and then kind of sneak in the office and start talking to them. Times have changed. Even the older guys like myself, we say pick up the phone. Well, kids, I can't believe I'm saying this, but younger people don't want to pick up the phone. They want to go and watch a smaller video clip. So if
Uh-huh.
we could take our knowledge and give it to them the way that they want it, figuring out like help with how do you select this piece of equipment, and it's on a website that's linked to HubSpot that we can track. Oh, these customers are coming here. They may not be calling us, but they're coming here. It's always about a personal connection. So we want to bring it back to the personal connection, but we know
Mhm.
what they're looking for, whether someone's on the traditional things like LinkedIn and our Instagram page, those types of things. But really,
Mhm.
if we can harness the information that we're giving them, maybe we do podcasts, maybe we do video clips, whatever they are. But now we're bringing them back through, again, the CRM, and we know what the customers are looking at, where we may not have known that before. I think that's where this is going for us.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny, like as you're saying all that, to me it's like that makes total sense. But at the same time, I also know that there, if there were peers of yours across the country, or let's just keep it to the US for now, they're going, what do you mean that your customers have seen something on your website? Which it's like, to me, that is like, that's what we were doing in 2012. But the fact that there are so many people in many industries that still don't realize that, like, if you're tracking however many customers it is, whether it's 1,000 or 3,000 or 10,000, you can know if they've come to your website and looked at certain things on your knowledge base that are indicators that they might be interested or ready to buy something, right? I mean, these are such simple things that so many businesses aren't doing yet. So thank you for mentioning.
Well, it's a good point that you say that, because as I'm saying it, I'm getting excited about it. And I forget that I have a good friend who's into technology and this type of thing. And every time I say something to him, he almost dismisses it because he did it 10, 15 years ago. But I think, going back to my earlier point, the industry is sleepy. We're not the only industry that's like that. People want to learn how to get into AI. Absolutely. And those types of things. I don't know the answer, but I know that you can do what we're doing and be a bit ahead of the curve, because I would imagine that most people that are in, especially smaller businesses and those types of things, don't know how to take advantage of the technology that's out there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. So I guess, as you were talking there, you're what you're really talking about is your customers, right? It's they are the ones that decide, and in your case, I think you have, it's almost like you have two different types of customers, right? The engineers really are your first customer. Would that be accurate?
Sure.
Yeah. But then ultimately, wherever the the product is being installed and then later serviced, that might be a different customer to the engineer, correct?
Right.
But either way, those are your customers, and those are the ones that are judging you against your competitors. So would you agree that this really comes down to customer experience?
We would like to make it about that. The industry, again, was never really focused on that. It was what's in front of you. Who were you dealing with at that point? But that's what we're trying to do is, and again, kind of learn this from the SaaS world, customer experience and success managers and all that, is now we deal with the engineer, we deal with the contractor. Our particular company had never done a great job of dealing directly with the owner. That's part of, when you say the owner, that's who's building the building or whatever it may be. That's the cradle to grave, the full circle, that we want to bring that experience to everyone, to bring up our stature at each of those different pieces of the market. And it's about making sure that when we go through the engineer, the contractor, and then we get to the owner, that the owner then goes back to the engineer and says, we want Tri-State on our project. And that's typical for any business, I'd assume. But that's what we're trying to complete, that circle.
Yeah. Which it's interesting that you say that, because what I've seen, like, so we also, in addition to, companies like yours, we do quite a bit of work in the AEC space. So architecture, engineering, construction, right? So the whole industry, as it were. And just as a side note, we love engineers, but
so do we.
There's actually, I'm going to mention that. So one of the things that we love about engineers, and it's funny, because a few of our clients who are actually trained engineers but are now doing other things like sales and business development and other things. What's the one constant? In fact, one of them actually said to me once, he said, the thing about engineers is they love what they do so much that they would do it for free as long as someone paid their mortgage and their kids' education. And that's it. I've actually started tracking that, and it's amazing how true that really is. Engineers are just good people who want to do great work for great customers. But anyway, coming back to where I was, so when I said customer experience, and this is really interesting because, again, coming from a more traditional industry, to you, that seems like something that is like out there and is more like SaaS, for the SaaS space. But what we've seen is that, so so a lot of people who are listening now, when I say customer experience, they don't even think, they're not even writing the word out. They just say CX,
Yeah.
right? But in my mind, what CX, the acronym for customer experience, what it really, how that translates in the AEC space, which I'm putting you in that space, is relationships. Because I know that in the construction and engineering space, it's always about relationships. And ultimately, so even the example you've now mentioned 3 times or 4 times, where in the olden days, or like in the 1900s or the early 2000s, you'd actually bring like a set of documents to your customer's office and desk and sit down with them. That was all about relationship building. That's all it was. That was how you provided the customer experience back then. And then you went on to say, well, but that's not how people want to do it nowadays. So what customer experience looks like today has evolved like everything else. So we just have to figure out, what does our customer want today, and if you can deliver that, you're always winning.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I think that's the most important part, is identifying what they want. Like I said, you do, your parents do too. This is the way you should have done it. This is the way I did it. Well, that way doesn't work anymore. And our challenge is always that it's about the relationship. I think with anything, it's about the relationships, or how do you maintain a relationship with someone, but also make everyone happy, so to speak. Right. And that's, I think, what we're trying to do. We can still have our relationships, but the customer success piece of it is, how do you replicate that? So all, 200 universities in the Philadelphia area, whatever that number may be, are happy with Tri-State, because we can't have a relationship with all of them. So we need to figure out a way to scale beyond the numbers of people that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And how do you do that?
That's a good question.
Using technology, I guess,
that's what we're going to find out here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and the other thing, that the knowledge base that you talked about is something else I'd like to talk to you about another time. But because knowledge base is another huge opportunity right now for companies that do have a CRM. Pretty much every CRM worth its salt has a knowledge base built into it, but very few companies are actually using the knowledge base, even the way it was meant to be used a year or two ago. And now with AI, the knowledge base is, can do all kinds of things. So you talked about where you have this knowledge base for engineers, where they can essentially find anything that they're looking for. And I think there's going to be there's a lot of really interesting opportunity there now with AI, where engineers can find whatever they're looking for in your knowledge base even more quickly than they could before.
That's where we need to get to. And like I said, going through what we had to go through with implementations and just getting the building blocks of the correct data input. Now, what are we doing with it? Now we're on to that next phase of, okay, what can we do? Even if it's internal, we use things like Gemini and ChatGPT to take a look at specifications, figure out what the points are. There's other thoughts we have, again, not to give away all the secrets we're thinking about, but that's something we're doing internally. And then we would like to bring that back to, if it's with customers, or even, again, kind of internally, but with our technicians that are out there making calls to each other. There's typically a guy or two that they'll go to get the information. If we can help them move along quicker and get the knowledge in front of them faster, that'd be amazing. And I know we're not that far off.
Yeah, that which is another perfect use case for that, and incredibly valuable, right? Where essentially they have access to that information 24/7. They don't have to be waiting for one or two people who might be a bottleneck to get back to them.
Yeah, we'd love to do that. Again, when you think about the change management, those guys are still going through a new system. So it's always, before I do anything, we're going to take this one slow, get their input, talk to them about it. What do you want? And implement that slowly so that everyone's not on their heels. I found that to be important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think the knowledge-based one specifically is a lot easier than a lot of people might realize. So so HubSpot's customer agent is a perfect example of that, and it's I think it's now the fastest growing agent, AI agent in HubSpot, because it's able to answer. So I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of customers that are using it now that they've surveyed at HubSpot, and the minimum number of customer questions that are being answered now is around 50%. But in as much as 90% of customer questions are now being handled through the knowledge base by the customer agent, which is one of the AI
Wow.
in HubSpot. So yeah, we'll definitely talk more about that, because I think it's a great opportunity.
The more I'm in there, being someone that wanted to implement a CRM, it's amazing how much is out there that I have not explored in HubSpot, and we've been using it every day for 6 months now.
Right.
There's a lot out there.
I mean, this wasn't, this was in beta until, like a month ago.
Okay.
And it's just, but the people who were using it in beta just saw the value immediately, and now it's just taking off like wildfire. So, and that's again the great thing about partnering with a technology company that is always looking to see what do their customers like you and I, what do they need next, and what's possible, and let's make sure we get it to them.
I mean, they've been amazing. HubSpot, I'm talking about just seeing different companies and how implementation goes, of course, through a partner, but getting feedback, the pace at which they're growing. I mean, I think that's one of the decisions we had to make, was when you're looking at the software, it could be custom built for your business, but it may not have what you need to grow. And that's the challenge we had, to grow with your company. When we found HubSpot, I mean, there was no end to what they roll out. And, we spoke to Aaron the other day, and just turning on betas for us, right? Like, oh, this might be useful to you, and let me update. You just can't keep up with what they're doing. It's so fast.
Yeah. But again, I think if you just take that engineering approach that you always do, and again, that's another benefit of having engineers and thinking like an engineer, is you see what's available, but then you look at what's practically necessary right now. Like, if there was one thing that would really help our team, do better work, or be more productive, or take more off their plate, and then just sort of do one thing at a time, because it can be overwhelming, because there's so much that's possible, which is with the whole AI world now in general, right? I think the possibilities are what makes it so overwhelming. So it's really important for everybody just to figure out how could this really benefit our business the most in the next 90 days, and then do that. And then the next 90 days, you figure out what's next.
There's so much out there. I'm overwhelmed. I'm sure everyone is overwhelmed. How do you implement? What do you use? And I think part of what we've gone through in our business, the planning, has helped us to stay focused. Like I mentioned, we were going through this mad rush, but now, the terminology used, the one thing, I love that, right? There's a book called The One Thing. That's all right. Focus on what can you do now? What is that one thing that you can do today, or that you can implement? And that was part of that change that I mentioned, is previously we didn't have that thought process in the company. It mainly had to do with our previous software, but things were scattered, right? A little bit of this, a little bit of that. No, let's get this one thing right. And that's what we're doing now with our dashboards, with our within HubSpot for the sales guys. Before we roll them out, and they're kind of half and half, let's get the one, or in this case, it's 3. The one thing is, we're going to get these 3 dashboards correct, these reports. When they go there, they know that they can trust them. Then we move on to the next thing. We could produce dashboards. I've done them in my car with AI, right? You give me a report on this and it spits it out. but it's not how you want to do it. You want to make sure it's correct.
Yeah, and something that's gonna be useful for a longer term, for more, and easy for other people to use, right? Yeah. John, I'm just thinking, what else is there? Well, I guess so. In your sort of journey over the last, year and a half, 2 years, I mean, you've made a lot of progress, and you've made a lot of changes. Has it all been worth it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's the business side of things, and you know what's happened and where we're going, but also personally, it's been a great development to change things up. I mean, it is a testament to. I mean, it was a big leap to getting out of sales and getting into this, but from a personal standpoint, there's been growth. I've learned things, taking on a new role, so that's really been awesome. But then, as far as the business goes, it's just been great to see. I mean, we've grown even through this. The business has grown tremendously, and it's only getting bigger and faster because now we have the foundation. But to see, to see the benefits of what we talked about, and a perfect example is our accounting department. We had a new CFO come in during this process. He picked up the old ways of doing things, which were done because that's how they needed to get done. But we have this report. It's called the Work in Place or Work in Progress report, the WIP report, and it's a construction accounting method. It used to take us 4 days to put it together. So he would just hunker down and he'd get the spreadsheets out and he'd copy and paste and he'd do this. And I said, Steve, it's going to take 10 seconds when we're done this. And that valley of despair, it was tough. It was getting the right information from multiple areas, getting the reports down. This is through BuildOps. This is our operation software. And one day it finally worked. And Steve, I saw him showing someone else that it only took a couple of seconds and we could do it at any point in time. It was like, we just say 4 days of manpower. It took 6 months of pain to get there. But those types of things are really worthwhile to, go through all this and then finally come out with something that's concrete. This is what we did.
Right. Yeah.
And now we know the information's correct. On top of that, it's not just the speed, but it's correct because we are now synced between accounting and between operation software, and there's processes to double check and those types of things.
Yeah. So that's essentially that's now real time?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. So we can look at the business where we are on these projects. We can look at it for any point in time from May to July, or not only May, July, but what was it on May 15th in that period? So we can see how things change. Previously, we just had to take another 4 days to rerun it. So everything is live and you click a button and it's there.
Yeah. So I mean, again, the benefits and the value of that are immense, right?
Yeah.
And that's just one example. You talked about something else, which I think is really interesting. You spent most of your career until the last couple of years in sales, right? And you just, in this last response of yours, you said, I made the switch from sales to what I'm doing now in RevOps. And I never really thought about it that way, and never, and until you just said it, which is, what you're doing now is as valuable than anything else could be to your sales, because the way we think about and talk about RevOps is RevOps enables your entire revenue team, right? So marketing, sales, and customer service. So I think the value of what you're doing, of going from sales to RevOps is really, really interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how many other companies think about it in the same way, and they have people sort of stepping into leading their revenue operations like you're doing at TriState, understanding what is important. As over 20 years in sales, you know what is important to salespeople, and you can now enable all the rest of the sales team and anyone else who's customer facing through this very scalable, technology and automation. That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, for the salespeople alone, it's something that I wanted to do because I knew there were tools out there to help them grow beyond the tools that they have now. But for the business, yeah, I mean, you're multiplying your effect. I only had so many customers I could deal with, but I'm more interested in business per se, right? So that was just one piece of the business, but this is how can we help the company grow and multiply and find new markets? And we're just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we're just starting to bring on marketing and those types of things. We've never done those, so this is going to be pretty amazing what we do.
Yeah. How would you sort of, as we start to wrap up here, John? How would you summarize? So for anyone listening who hasn't even heard of RevOps before, or maybe they have, but they're not quite sure what it is, and now that you've sort of started this journey and you're sort of you're well into it and you're starting to see all these benefits, I mean, how would you, I guess, describe why, or say why anyone should consider essentially the role that you're doing now, which is thinking about your revenue as one fully integrated, aligned, customer facing team with aligned processes, aligned technology, around all the business metrics that matter. How do you think about that now, and how do you think it might be valuable to anyone listening that's thinking about it?
Well, I think if you're someone who, I guess, has the engineering mindset, I like to say someone who's a problem solver and you're interested in processes, this is perfect. Technology, those types of things, because you get to use technology to implement process. But then if you have that interest in business where you want to help a company grow, you can leverage what you're doing through technology. So it's like it's like you're in a sandbox of toys that you get to use to grow a business. I mean, it's I don't know that it's for everyone, but it's amazing if you're, especially if you're in a business that, or in a market that does not do these types of things now.
Hmm.
You get to lead the charge and do something that other people aren't doing.
Right. Yeah. That's yeah, you're right. I love that analogy of the sandbox of toys. And I think it's, I guess maybe if I would add anything to that, it's almost like it's a sandbox of toys, which is a lot of fun for you as the person doing it. But if you can then put your customer at the center of it, like they're the ones that ultimately benefit from all these fun things that you're doing, that makes it even more attractive and more powerful.
Well, I mean, when we get to a point where we leave a job site and the customer has the report on what we've done, right? Because so many times we'll do something great for a customer and through technology or whatever it is, they don't get that information. They don't know, right? So we always talk to the techs about the techs go out there, they do a great job. And then somehow we may drop the ball and the customer doesn't know we were there and we did something good for the customer. And then when you pick up the phone in those cases and you talk to the customer, they're like, oh, wow, you did that. That's really great. Going back to what you're talking about is, yes, through this technology, we want to have that by time we leave. Here's the report. Here's what we did. Because now they're going to say, oh, we want TriState on our next project. Because look at how quickly they get back to us and fix our problems. We were fixing the problems before. Sometimes they just didn't know that we were fixing them.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, really cool. So John, so one last, just to just a general, so as a business leader, to all these sort of whether they're revenue leaders, business owners, business leaders out there, do you have any advice you'd like to leave them with?
I would say take your time and listen to people before you start doing things. If you have that luxury, getting people on the same page and making them part of the team has been the most important learning experience. And therefore they own it. They come up with it. It's not just you dictating what you want to do. It's, you could put any type of technology or anything out in front of someone. It could be perfect, But if they don't want to use it or they feel like they didn't have a part of it, you're still dealing with human beings no matter what. You can't just implement technology and expect people to use it. And haven't been great at it. We'll get better at it every time. And hopefully, all 125 employees in a couple of years will say, this is great, So that's our goal.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was really good advice. And I think it kind of it goes with everything you've been talking about as an engineer, which we've been leaning really hard into the last couple of years, which is it's all about progress, not perfection, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think I might have heard you say that before. I might have had written down on my wall somewhere, actually.
Yeah, which actually I learned from my daughter was one of my daughters was fortunate enough to be one of the first all girls engineering classes in high school, and so they had a parents' evening where they we went along, and we walked in and sat down in the sort of lab or whatever, and there was just one slide on the screen, and it said it's like failure equals success. And I'm like, yes. Finally, the kids are learning like how the real world and how business actually works. And again, this is from an engineering perspective, because I don't have to tell you, but engineering, and I wish I'd been through engineering training, because I always try to hide my failures, and now I realize that failures is exactly how you learn and grow.
No, they're great. You just take one step at a time and try to figure things out, and you're going to make mistakes, but you just keep pushing through it.
Yeah. No, that's really good advice. John, thanks so much for being on the show, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, Brendon, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, take care.
All right. See you.